They say space is a top priority, but it's missing from the strategy. So what are they really hiding?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I thought the chairman asked a great question to you, Mr. Berkowitz, about the prioritization of space strategy, which we've heard from the president is important, and yet that's not reflected in the budget. I mean, they say you can judge values by the budget, and the national defense strategy, of course, as well. Both the unclassified and the classified versions are completely silent on space. Can you elaborate on why that is and what you're doing to rectify given the fact that we're spending billions of dollars on something the department can't even prioritize in the only strategy document that they have delivered to Congress thus far?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to correct the mischaracterization. In fact, the National Defense Strategy's classified report addresses space, so it is addressed within the actual. And say, in addition, is that the interagency is in the process of conducting a broad range of activities to implement the President's executive order on ensuring American space superiority. Part of that effort includes developing a new national security strategy for space security. As part of that, that will be used to drive an architecture as well as a technology roadmap that will be reflected in the President's forthcoming budget request.
We look forward to seeing it. I mean, you have a subcommittee here that recognizes this is important and would very much like to invest in capabilities, and we'd love to see the prioritization, commensurate with what we saw from previous administrations, including the first Trump administration. I'm not sure how you rank Venezuela in space, but to me, space is much more important. In the National Defense Strategy, the department supposes to deal with simultaneity via burden sharing amongst allies. It's been the country's position for many years, across decades in fact, that global proliferation of nuclear weapons, even if amongst allies, is inherently destabilizing. It's hard not to correlate France's recent announcement to increase their nuclear weapons arsenal as not directly tied to President Trump's continued bashing of our European allies and questioning America's commitment to NATO. Dr. Kadlec, can you please elaborate on how the department views burden sharing with regards to nuclear weapons?
Ranking Member Moulton, thank you for the question. I would just offer you the insights from Undersecretary Colby, who recognized that proliferation, even within our allies, is not something that we would accept or find beneficial. And so I think from the standpoint of France, they have an independent nuclear force that operates independently of NATO, and I think that's their choice to make. But as far as
this is one of those moments where the words don't match the reality. And when that happens in national security, you should pay very close attention. Because what we're watching here is a quiet contradiction being exposed in real time. On one hand, we keep hearing that space is critical, that it's the future of warfare, that dominance in space will define global power in the 21st century. And that's not an exaggeration. Every major military power on Earth is racing to control that domain. But then you look at the actual strategy documents, and suddenly that urgency disappears. No clear prioritization, no strong presence in the unclassified national defense strategy, no visible alignment between what leaders are saying and what they're actually planning. And that's where the concern begins. Because in government, budgets are truth, strategies are signals, and when something is truly a priority, it shows up clearly in both. So when lawmakers start asking, if space is so important, why isn't it reflected here? That's not a political question. That's a credibility question. Now, to be fair, the response we hear is familiar. It's in the classified version. Work is ongoing. A new strategy is coming. But think about that pattern. It's always coming. It's always being developed. It's always just around the corner. Meanwhile, billions of dollars are being spent. And that raises a deeper issue, not just about space, but about accountability. Because if Congress itself is struggling to get
nuclear weapons,
clear
even if
answers
amongst
on
allies,
priorities,
is inherently destabilizing.
what does that say about
it's hard
oversight?
not to correlate
What
France's
does that
recent
say about
announcement to increase their
transparency?
nuclear weapons arsenal
And then
as not
the
directly
conversation
tied to President
shifts,
Trump's continued
and it gets
bashing
even
of our
more
European allies
serious.
and questioning
Now
America's
we're
commitment to
talking
NATO.
about nuclear
Dr. Cadlick,
weapons.
can you please elaborate
about
on how the department
allies,
views burden
about
sharing with
trust.
regards to
Because
nuclear
while
weapons?
the U.S. says it remains committed to defending NATO,
Thank you, Member Moulton.
the
Thank you for the
reality on the
question.
ground
I'll
is
just,
starting to
offer
look
you,
different.
insights from
Countries like France
Undersecretary
are
Colby, who
openly signaling that
recognized
they may need to
proliferation
strengthen
even
their own
within our
nuclear
allies is not
capabilities.
something that
That
we
doesn't
would
happen in a
accept or
vacuum.
find
That
beneficial.
happens when
And so I think
allies
from the
start
standpoint of
questioning
France, they
whether
have
the
an independent
security
nuclear
guarantees
force
they've relied
that
on for
operates,
decades
independently of
are
NATO,
still solid.
and I think that's their
And
choice to
here's the
make. But as
dangerous
far as
part.
NATO members, I
Nuclear
think,
proliferation,
Undersecretary Colby is
even
on the
among
record,
allies,
whether
has
it's in this
always
chamber
been
or in the
considered
Senate, saying very
destabilizing.
specifically about that,
That's been
that
a
it's not beneficial.
consistent
So is there
position
anything that
across
the
administrations,
Secretary or the
across
Department of Defense
decades.
intends to
But
do
now we're
to
entering a moment
alleviate
where that
France's
stability
concerns
is
about our
being
reliability
tested
in
because
defending NATO so that they
perception
do not
matters
expand their arsenal?
just as
Well, I
much
think
as
we've already
policy.
done it, and Undersecretary
You can say
Colby
we're
again
committed.
is on the record
You can point
publicly
to
in a Munich
aircraft
conference
deployments,
and during his
weapon
visit to NATO to
systems,
say
and military
unequivocally
presence.
America extends
But
its,
if allies
extended
don't
deterrence,
feel that commitment,
capabilities,
if they
to
start
NATO
acting
and to the
independently,
Indo-Pacific region.
then the
Well, that's great that
entire
he said it.
balance begins to shift.
But the reality that's
and once
transpiring
that
is quite
shift
different.
starts,
Well, sir, I
it's
think the
very
reality is
hard
that
to
we have,
reverse.
aircraft, F-35s
Then
that are
comes one of the most
stationed in Europe,
fascinating
and we
parts
have
of this
dual-capable
exchange,
aircraft, and we
the
have nuclear
comparison
weapons
to the
stored in Europe.
three-body
I think
problem.
that's a pretty
That's not
pretty
just
loud
a
statement in
throwaway
terms of what
line.
our
That's a
policy is
concept
and what our
from physics
capabilities are.
that describes
President
systems
Macron's
so
statement was pretty loud
complex
as well.
they become
And I think
almost
we
impossible
ignore
to
it at our
predict.
peril.
And in this context, it's about managing
Cadlick, I was,
multiple global
pleased to hear you
threats
talk
at
about
once.
the challenges of
Powers
dealing
like
with
China
key
and Russia,
adversaries. Some might
alongside
call this the three-body
emerging
problem as
conflicts
opposed to the two-body
elsewhere.
problem and the
This isn't the
mathematical
Cold War
challenges that
anymore,
presents.
where the U.S.
I know
focused
General Cotton was
primarily
pursuing
on one
this,
rival.
both within
This
the
is
Pentagon,
something
but also
far
within,
more complicated.
academia.
Multiple
I got
adversaries,
a chance to talk to
competing
Admiral Krell
interests,
about this.
interconnected
Would either of you like to
risks.
comment on how you
It's about whether
intend to
the
continue
United
General
States
Cotton's
is
work and
actually
get us a
aligned
better answer here in
strategically,
Congress,
financially,
than,
and
as the,
politically with the realities of the
gentleman
world
from
it's operating
Omaha
in
said in
today.
the,
And
gentleman
right
from
now,
Tennessee's opening
based on
statement,
what we're seeing,
don't have
that alignment
good numbers
looks
here.
shaky.